So as you have probably seen on the news, there's a series of wildfires happening across various regions of Canada, which made headlines since the sky itself has burned into a dim red throughout many areas, including recently New York. So since this has been a topic of discussion recently, I thought it'd be a good idea to make a brief video on it. Of course, as you all know, we can't talk about wildfires without talking about climate change and its impact on recent wildfires. Relationships are never one-to-one, so you can't say if a particular wildfire was caused specifically by climate change, of course, but climate change exacerbates the conditions required for wildfires to not only start, but also continue. Anyway, let's take a look at this video and I'll give more of my thoughts later.
And we are now seeing record numbers of forest fires across the country. And the question today for a lot of people is, well, are we seeing this because of climate change, or are we seeing this because of climate activism?
You heard it here first, folks. The forest fires in Canada wasn't caused by climate change, it was caused by climate activism. Bravo, bravo. I couldn't possibly think of a better way to give harmful misinformation in order to push a political agenda. Amazing stuff. Oh, and the icing on the cake? No evidence. That's just the best part of it, isn't it?
Canada's emergency preparedness minister says images of wildfires burning across the country are some of the most severe ever witnessed in Canada, and current forecasts for the next few months indicate the potential, this is my little Freudian slip of the day, potential for continued higher than normal fire activity. Well, of course. And this is the rhetoric we're hearing from the Liberal Party. And of course, it's a lot of fear. Be afraid, be very afraid. This is all gonna happen because of climate change.
Before we go any further, I want to make something clear right away. There wasn't just one wildfire that started recently. A lot of people seem to think that there is just one that started because it was only recently on the news when New York's sky turned red, but that's actually not the case. Not only are there many different wildfires across Canada, many dozen of them in fact, but also these wildfires have been around for a long time, as early as April. And April is important here because the fire season has started to expand. Summers are longer, they're starting earlier and ending later. April is now around the time in which fire season starts, and that's only just one of the ways that climate change has contributed to an increased number of forest fires. Not only does it extend the wildfire season, it also causes the air to be drier due to a more polarized distribution of rainwater, along with an increased number of lightning strikes, which account for about half the spark of Canada's wildfires. So can we point to a specific wildfire and say, this one is specifically caused by climate change? Because if we didn't release CO2 into the air, that one particular lightning strike wouldn't have happened? No, we can't say that. But what we can say is that the number of wildfires have increased, and it correlates to the worsening of conditions caused by climate change, things I've named above. So climate change isn't causing wildfires themselves, but rather they're increasing the number of them.
I came to Ottawa this morning from my home province of Nova Scotia, where our communities are literally on fire. Thousands upon thousands of families have been displaced from their homes. Hundreds are watching as their homes may be turned into ashes. 8 months ago, Hurricane Fiona damaged our communities beyond measure, displacing not just homes, but sweeping people out to sea in some instances. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are peddling policies that they know will increase the level of pollution that is causing these severe weather events.
Okay, so this is a direct causation, he's saying. So forest fires in Fiona were directly causal because of climate change. Now, there are carbon taxes that were put in place to protect, I guess, Canadians. None of that money went to any of the victims of Fiona. In fact, the government of Canada only said that they would match individuals' donations to help out the victims of Fiona at the time. Unbelievably, but
why does that even matter here? The money used to help victims is obviously going to be a separate budget compared to revenues earned from other sources. But either way, how Canada's government distributes their money hardly has anything to do with the actual science of climate change.
Is there a causal link between climate change and the forest fire?
Yes, there absolutely is, as I've just explained. If you want evidence, there are plenty of papers online for you to read for free. Again, I make this point a lot, but people who also generally are against science have also never read a single scientific paper in their lives. But of course, why would they do that? When it comes to reading actual science from scientists who dedicate their lives to this field, of course they're not going to want to read it. It's obviously easier to plug your ears and push the agenda you believe rather than leave your echo chamber and read actual science. It's pathetic. so instead I'll do the reading for you. Note that there are tons of papers on this, more than you can ever read in a sitting, so I still urge anyone to go and find these scientific papers on their own and get a more comprehensive idea. Scientists have gathered actual data from this where you can observe various graphs and the mechanisms behind them, but I'm going to read out a summary of it here for everyone. For a wildfire to start, 3 essential conditions known as the fire triangle are needed: fuel, oxygen, and an ignition source. Climate change related rainfall anomalies can intensify drought in tropical and subtropical areas. Rainfall is becoming more concentrated in winter, making other seasons, particularly summer, hotter and drier. An increase in the evaporation of moisture in soil during dry periods leads to an increase in flammable vegetation that can fuel wildfires, under the assumption that forest management is unchanged. The global surface wind speed has increased substantially since 2010 after 3 decades of decrease. This shift is driven mainly by ocean-atmosphere oscillations such as El Nino events, which might be related to climate change. Climate change is projected to enhance differences in temperature between the land and the sea, resulting in greater land-sea differences in air pressure, which boosts wind power in tropical and southern subtropical areas. Strong winds provide more oxygen for wildfires and encourage their spread, potentially outstripping firefighting capability. Increase in the frequency and intensity of heat waves under climate change provide more ignition sources for wildfires. Climate change also affects lightning strikes, another important ignition source. A study of cloud ice fluxes, changes in the masses of ice particles in clouds over time, which are positively correlated with lightning strikes, projected an overall decrease in lightning strikes, especially in tropical regions, but a likely increase over North America and Siberia. Furthermore, the wildfire season is starting much earlier and ending later because of a warming climate. Consequently, there's a wider window in which wildfires can occur and a narrower window for prescribed burning. Deliberate burning of available vegetation during cooler season, which is an essential strategy to reduce the risk of wildfires. On top of all that, decreased water supplies throughout the southwest due to reduction in water flow caused by climate change also contributes to a more difficult time in controlling these fires. So yes, there is indeed a good causation here. One of the best resources out there is the National Climate Assessment Report, which collects data from hundreds of papers and provides useful case studies. Wildfires are always going to happen, but climate change has for sure increased the number of those fires by about 2 times the amount. But of course, climate change also increases wildfires elsewhere too, but a small number of mechanisms may differ. Climate change influences various atmospheric patterns in intensifying air circulation around the equator, influencing the convergence of moisture and shifting rainwater, redistributing the seasonal variability and transfer of heat, which results in lower rainwater for various regions such as Australia, contributing to wildfire formations. Basically, climate change is going to affect each region differently, but the areas most susceptible to wildfires are still going to be largely the same. Climate change will worsen their conditions through a few key mechanisms, and things will get more extreme going forward. The point is, there is no shortage of this research, and I'll be sure to provide a few resources in the description below.
Well, there is causal links between the forest fires and something. Well, let's have a look. Kevin Pacitti on Twitter is saying, climate change, part 9. Man charged with 6 counts of arson after series of fires this spring. Part 4 of climate change. RCMP says arson behind 29 Okanagan wildfires in the last 4 years.
Right, not all forest fires are caused by lightning strikes or other natural causes. Many of them are caused accidentally by humans, and then a very small number of them are caused by deliberate arson. What's your point? You're cherry picking ones that were caused by arson, and you're going to generalize it to all wildfires. Wonderful. But not to mention that climate change doesn't just contribute to the increased chances of starting a fire, but also contributes to the maintenance and spread of those fires. As I mentioned earlier, drier environments cause for increased fire intensity, and strong winds contribute to faster spreads. Those are things that are definitely not deliberately done by human beings. Look, at the end of the day, I know what your intentions are. You're trying to paint a picture in which climate activists are setting forest fires in order to push a political agenda. You think it is eco-terrorism that is starting and maintaining these fires, but that's just simply not the case. And while sure, maybe you could point out a small number of cases in which wildfires were intentionally started by arson, that is simply just cherry-picking and completely ignores the hard fact that climate change is worsening and increasing the frequency of wildfires. This is not just a problem for Canada, it is a problem for the world. And until we can actually take action and address climate change seriously, people will continue to die and people are going to continue to suffer. Get your dicks out of your sisters for one goddamn second and acknowledge reality for what it is.